Hello, I'm Gemma and this is Nonfic Books, and I am finally back with a new video. And I thought I would do for the Love of the Classics tag to get me back into the swing of things, because while I normally read a lot of non-fiction, I am also a big fiction fan and a big fan of the classics. Firstly, before I really crack on with this, thank you very much for everyone who's left me such nice comments over my last few videos and best wishes for me and the little one. Thank you very much. I hadn't had time to reply to everyone, so I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone because that was really nice. I'm finding my feet again, hopefully now. Admittedly, little babies require less attention than slightly bigger babies, so things are hectic. And if you hear some thumping around, that's probably some little feet bashing about under the play gym, because I'm taking the opportunity of a tiny bit of calm to try and get this video filmed. On to the tag. The first question, why do you read classics and how often do you read them? I read probably one classic every month, every other month. Some months I read more, some months I don't read anything that month. But they're always a sort of regular form of fiction that's around. I read them because I enjoy them. I grew up in a household, my mum had studied English literature at the university, so our house was full of books and there wasn't any sort of division between books. They were just books. So I ended up reading classics and learnt to enjoy them, so they've never been something that has intimidated me. And also I grew up near Stratford-upon-Avon and saw a lot of Shakespeare from a very young age, so I didn't have that intimidation factor that I think is a thing that puts a lot of people off things like classics. So what is a period, country or culture that you haven't read many classics from and that you'd like to? I would really like to read more Italian books because I'm really interested in Italy and I don't think I've actually read any books from Italian authors. The other one is Zimbabwe or South African classic books because I haven't read anything from those countries and my dad is Zimbabwean and grew up in South Africa, so I would be very interested to read some of the literature from those countries. Which modern book, number 3, do you think will become a classic in 100 years? And I love this question because I've been really interested to see everyone's answers, but my answer is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I don't normally like Booker Prize winning books because I think they're just too often experimental and waffy for me, and I'm more of a story driven person rather than an experimental or style driven person. But I thought these were really gripping, and if the third book ends up staying at the high quality that the first two are, I think this entire series will become classics, and also I think they are really nicely designed. Question 4, what is the last classic that you read? This is a very old but true loved one. This is Persuasion by Jane Austen. I'm in my 30s and I have read most of Jane Austen's most years since I was about 15. So I dread to think how many times I've actually read this book, and I love it. I think to me it's the most romantic of all of Jane Austen's books. Not necessarily my favourite because that's really hard to pick, but I think the most romantic. Although I dislike being older than the main characters now. Dreadful. What is the first classic you ever read? I don't know. I grew up reading things like The Secret Seven, Beatrix Potter, Secret Garden, all of those sort of classic children's books, but I don't actually remember reading any of them. I just was sort of familiar with them and I know I did, but I don't remember reading them. And I think the one I genuinely remember reading the first would be Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which I read when I was about 9 years old. I think this is a very accessible book. I think it's quite good for younger readers because there isn't any sort of themes that they wouldn't particularly be able to understand. And if you come from a household like me, by that age you'd probably already seen adaptations of Pride and Prejudice numerous times. My brother, by the age of 6, his favourite choice of what to put on was the BBC version with Colin Firth of Pride and Prejudice, which I think must only have been out for a year or two by the time he was that age, but who knows. Anyway, he loved that, so we grew up watching it, so I think that's possibly why I found this quite an easy one to start with, because I already sort of knew the plot. But I think it's very accessible and would be a good one to get younger readers into classic books. Okay, what is your favourite classic book cover? I love the Alma Classics. I think they're really nicely designed, and my favourite one that I have at the moment is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. Also an excellent book, which I think you should read. But I just think it's really nicely designed, and for a pretty book cover they are not very expensive. They're £5 I think, and they're just sort of a standard book size, so they're great for just chucking in your bag and not having to worry, because I don't like being precious about books. I like being able to carry them with me, read them in the bath. If I need to, turn a page down. I try not to, but yeah, needs must sometimes. This has got to be my worst. This is just the ugliest cover known to mankind. It's Tess the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy, and it's the Wordsworth Classics version. What? If you've read Tess the D'Urbervilles, what does this have to do with anything? Wrong period, not good, don't like it. Classic authors you wish had written more books. Doesn't everyone? Jane Austen. It's got to be Jane Austen for me. And even if it's not more books, if she could have finished Sanditon and not written Mansfield Park, that would have been fine by me. Just no for Mansfield Park. I've had a complete mind blank. Looking at my shelves, what's her name? Anne Bronte. I had to get the right Bronte there because I don't like the other two, but Anne Bronte I really like. I'm not the biggest Victorian fan. I don't like melodrama particularly in books, and the other two Brontes had it in spades, whereas Anne, I like the realism and the nice pacing, just quite gentle, and also like her feminist side of things. So Anne Bronte, really wish she'd have written more. Oh dear. Least favourite classic. Great Gatsby has to be one. Dracula, I like the storyline, terribly written, really, really bad. Very influential and all, but really, really bad. Wuthering Heights, just no. Drama, 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 drama. I'll watch a film of it, that's great, but the book, no. And Ibsen, anything by Henry Ibsen. It is Heinrich Ibsen. No, just again. I know it's all meant to be very feminist and this, that and the other, but the female characters are bloody drips until right at the end when it's almost the sort of feminist version of Insta-love. It's like, bam, I've suddenly got self-esteem and will do something about it. No, thank you. Okay, favourite translated classic. I haven't got on with a lot of the translated classics that I have read. Most of them have been Russian, and it just, so far, I haven't found any Russian literature that's really done it for me. But I think Phantom of the Opera would probably be my favourite translated classic because I tend to prefer French novels. My favourite modern classic, I'm on the fence about modern classics. I haven't read enough of them to really sort of be sold by them, but the big sort of American classics aren't really my thing. I'm looking forward to reading more of the sort of female English novelists, because those are the ones that I've tended to enjoy most. But Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. Evelyn Waugh has to be my favourite 20th century author. I think he's absolutely fabulous. I love all of his books that I've read, and I'm really looking forward to working my way through the rest of them. But Brideshead Revisited has to be my all-time favourite. And then one that I think everyone should read, Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. The classic feminist tract. Just, yes, brilliant, beautifully written, really interesting, just win. Okay, classic literary place you would like to visit. Oh god, there's so many. Jane Austen's home, I'd love to go back to Bath, I'd love to go to the Harworth parsonage, which actually isn't very far away from here, so I don't know why I haven't done that. Other than that, can't think so off the top of my head, but loads of places I'd like to go to, so yeah. Classics, first classic you would recommend for a child. So I have a few here. There goes my pile of books. Hey ho. Oh, we're getting back into things well. Right, so again, I think Pride and Prejudice is a really nice one to start with, as is Sense and Sensibility for those like older readers. And then by older, I mean sort of like 8 or 9 onwards. I wouldn't start with the Brontes at that age though. I'd wait till being a teenager to read those, because those are often the sort of normal classics to get into. But The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgman Burnett, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, and then there's a beautiful film that probably looks massively dated now, because I would have been quite young when that came out, and that's quite a while ago. And then the Little Women series, which we have Little Women, Good Wives, and then I always get confused about the order of the last two, Little Men and Jo's Boys. I think this is a lovely series. I think that people will really get into it. And then for kids, I also think things like Beatrix Potter, Enid Blyton, anything like that is absolutely fabulous. Classics you think mistitled, haven't been able to think of one. I just sort of roll with it. Nothing stood out particularly as being completely weird to me. Your favourite classic that you'd recommend to everyone? Well, I have two. I have Vile Bodies by Evelyn Waugh, because much as Brideshead Revisited is my favourite Evelyn Waugh that I've read so much, it's the one that I think people will like slightly less. Most people will prefer Vile Bodies, I think. If you have neither read this nor seen the film Bright Young Things, read this book first, because Bright Young Things is such a good adaptation, you will sort of lose some of the pleasure of this beautiful writing. But if you have read this, go and watch Bright Young Things, or if you're never going to read this, which shame on you, go and watch that film, because again, it's beautiful. And then Dorothy L. Sayers, Whose Body, because I think classic genre fiction is often ignored quite a lot. And there's people like, I mean, obviously everyone knows Agatha Christie, but Dorothy L. Sayers and Josephine Tey and people like that who are absolutely fantastic authors. And I'd recommend either Whose Body or Josephine Tey's The Daughter of Time as really good starting places for classic literature. If it's sort of something you find a bit overwhelming, I think those are great places to start. And who do I tag? Anyone who wants to do this, because loads of people have done it, and I just love watching this. So if you've done this, leave a link to yours down below, and that's my cue to go. So I'll see you in a video soon. Bye!